friends, it's Liv and welcome back to my channel for another video. So today I am doing the Get to Know the Fantasy Reader tag. I saw my friend Katie do this over at Brightness Katie Reads and this looked like a lot of fun. I don't know about you guys probably know this, but fantasy is like 90% of what I read. There's something about just like escaping into another world that is so just dreamy and really just pulls me in, and I absolutely love that about fantasy. So here I am today with a lot of fantasy in my reading tastes, but I thought this was such a cool opportunity to get to know me and why I love fantasy, the type of fantasy I read. So without further ado, if you would like to know all about getting to know me, the fantasy reader, then just keep on watching. So the first question we have here is, what is your fantasy origin story? Essentially, how did I become a fantasy reader? What really kicked off this love for the genre? And I would have to say, honestly, as a kid, I read both Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. Those were the two main series that I attribute to my reading tastes. I think urban fantasy in general is kind of a great gateway stepping stone into the fantasy genre as a whole. It is a huge genre, and there's so many different subgenres, so many different categories, but urban fantasy is essentially set in the current world that you do live in, so our planet Earth, with just some magical hints and magical aspects. So I think it's great to kind of put yourself into the shoes of there's something in your world that is so magical. So once I really kind of got used to that, then I wanted to try bigger and more like the high fantasy stuff where you're in a completely different world. And so that kind of sucked me in from the point of wanting to see more magic and really just that escapism. Next up is, if you could be a character in a fantasy novel, who would you want to be the author, and what is one trope you would want your character to deal with? Honestly, I would have to say that I would trust either Cassandra Clare or Sarah J. Maas to write me into a fantasy book. Honestly, that means that I would become either like a shadow hunter or some kind of downworlder, or I'd be a fae, and let's be honest, that's awesome. So I would really trust them to give me a happy ending and not cause me too much trouble. There will be some trouble along the way, I can almost guarantee that, but hopefully I will end up with a happy ending in one of their books. As far as tropes go, I am not gonna lie, I love either the best friends to lovers trope. I think if there was some romance in the book, then I would kind of want it to go down that road. Honestly, another one would be The Chosen One, but that would lead me through quite the trials and tribulations, so I'm not 100% sure if that is one that I would want in my book, but I mean, it's worth a shot. Next up is, what is one fantasy you have read this year that you want everyone to know about? And this is a popular book, so I'm sure a lot of you know about it, but Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, I read earlier this year, and it quickly became like my favorite book maybe ever. Definitely in my top books of the year this far. It currently holds the top spot. If anything can knock Six of Crows out of the top spot for my book of 2020, I'm going to be very surprised. This is a book following 6 criminals needing to pull off this seemingly impossible heist set in the same world as the Grisha trilogy, also by Leigh Bardugo, but something about the characters like Kaz and Inej, I wouldn't trust Leigh Bardugo to write me into a fantasy book because I don't trust the trials and tribulations that she would put me through, but something about reading them happening to these characters and the way that they deal with them and interact with each other is just, it's wonderful. I haven't yet read Crooked Kingdom. I've read the first chapter, but I am going to need to reread it before I continue. Hopefully soon, because I would love to finish that, but I was spoiled for the ending, so I know kind of how it ends, and I'm not ready for that. Next up we have, what is your favorite subgenre of fantasy, and what is one subgenre of fantasy that you don't really read much? And I would have to kind of reiterate that my favorite subgenre would be urban fantasy. Again, something about taking the world that we know and the world that we live in and adding these really magical elements and magical species that just walk among us in our everyday lives. Something about that has always just called to me. So like the Shadowhunter books, Percy Jackson, even like Twilight and Harry Potter, something about that urban fantasy that it's like, yes, that is the world I live in and the world I know, but thinking that there is some magic out there in our world is probably my favorite. So number 5, we have auto by fantasy authors, and I have 4 that I kind of want to mention here. The first one is of course Sarah J Maas, because this would not be a live to read video if I didn't mention Sarah J Maas and my love for everything she's ever written. The second she puts out a new book, I will go pick it up off the shelves, and it's just, my collection is growing. I do also collect foreign editions and different copies of Throne of Glass, so that is something that I am kind of building up over the years here. And then we also have Leigh Bardugo, of course, for Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, and she does also have an urban fantasy that came out last year called Ninth House, which was actually the first book of hers I had read from start to finish, and that was another one that I really, really loved. And then of course we have Cassandra Clare, because the majority of the books that she does put out are the Shadowhunter books. So of course I will be picking those up right away. And last but certainly not least, we also have Kendra Blake. I feel like I don't mention Kendra Blake enough on my channel, but I absolutely loved Three Dark Crowns, that entire series. I binged through in like less than a month, probably just a couple weeks. Those really sucked me in, and that has been really rare for a series to do lately. Again, I'm kind of I start a million books at once, or I will read a book, put it down, and then never pick up the sequel until I have to go back and reread the first book. So the fact that Three Dark Crowns could really just pull me in and I could go through the entire thing was something that was a wonderful surprise. And also her other series, Anna Dressed in Blood, I absolutely loved in high school. So whatever she writes next, rest assured I will be picking it up. Number 6 is, how do you find new fantasy books? And honestly, anywhere with book social media is where the majority of my TBR has come from. Booktube, of course, because we are right here, right now, as well as Bookstagram, Twitter, and most recently BookTok, which is the book side of TikTok. I personally created an account so I could do like some bookish memes, maybe some recommendations, but I'm having a lot of fun on that app, and my TBR has grown tremendously. Next up, we have an upcoming fantasy release that you were excited for, and hands down I have to say Lore by Alexandra Bracken. I actually haven't finished one of her books before. I am currently reading The Darkest Minds, and I'm flying through that one. This is another one that is helping to pull me out of the reading slump I have been in forever, but I really like her writing style and I would love to read more. I'd love to finish the Darkest Minds series like all in one go if I can. Fingers crossed that happens. But Lore is kind of a Greek mythology retelling, I think having to do with Medusa, but I read the synopsis of it. It comes out in early 2021, and right away I think that is my most anticipated release for 2021 already, and 2020 is only like half over, so the fact that my anticipated release list is starting to grow, I might be in trouble next year. But Lore sounds fantastic, and I am so excited to finally get my hands on that when it comes out. I can't wait. Number 8, what is one misconception about fantasy that you would love to be laid to rest? Personally, I have found that in fantasy books, the hero of the majority of YA books are women, and the hero of the majority of adult fantasy books are men. So I would love to see more like really awesome women in adult fantasy. If you do have any recommendations, please let me know down below, because I am always trying to read more fantasy. I'm currently trying to branch out into more of the adult high fantasy genre, because I do almost exclusively read YA, and I would love to change that. I would love to see more guys in YA fantasy and more women in adult fantasy. So not necessarily maybe like a misconception, but something I would like to see changed. Number 9 is, if someone has never read a fantasy book, what are 3 recommendations that you would have? And I would have to say Harry Potter, Six of Crows, and Three Dark Crowns. I think as far as fantasy goes, those are some that can really just like suck you into the world that you're reading in, and it really makes you want to read more. So I think those are 3 books that would be a wonderful like gateway into reading fantasy. So number 10 are fantasy creators that you would recommend everyone go check out, and I have 3 that I do quickly want to mention, and they will all be linked down below in case you haven't seen their videos and would like to check them out. But they are G over at Book Roast, Becca from Becca and the Books, and Katie over at Brightness Katie Reads. All 3 of these creators, you can tell they put so much hard work and dedication into their videos, and I really do trust their reading tastes, and that something that they like is most likely something I'm going to like. So a good number of books on my TBR have come from their videos. videos. And again, if you haven't seen these wonderful creators yet, I will have their channels linked down below so you can go check them out. So there you have it, guys. That was the Get to Know the Fantasy Reader tag. I hope you enjoyed getting to know more about me and why I love fantasy, what type of fantasy I read. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like it, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to this channel down below if you haven't already, because I do upload every week on this channel and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.